Okay, guys, we are just doing quickie winter wrap. It is now the first weekend of the month of March. It's really just to follow up with what I think is the first phase of the I'd say autumn winter offensive. It started pretty late in autumn. Some would say it was half October, so basically it was half autumn. But from what we saw, the real counteroffensive along the line happened the second week of after the second week of October, except for Avdivka, of course. So why is it this very short space without questions today? Just to lay out the foundations of something that we are probably going to do in a more natural way, because right now most of the Timor criminal experiences were a bit nilly willy, and there was no logic except for groundbreaking situations. Therefore, I would rather have this thing being done every maybe 2 weeks or every week, with here and there some kind of interjections like this one. Most important part for the situation up front right now is, according to whatever source you're following, since October to now, we are looking at roughly 300 to 400 kilometers that were taken all over the front. If we add the the gray zones created, we are going to about 800 to 850 kilometers that the Ukrainians lost. So basically, it's not that Russians have taken them, but Ukrainians have been pushed back from it. This is not exactly what I had foreseen, because I had this logic that all over the southeastern Donetsk front, we should be at around 400 square kilometers taken within the end of February. We are slightly under, but the logic is that we are still on track on the fact of the strategic and tactical aspect of it. Now, there are a couple of things that need to be reshuffled. First of all, the loss of Avdiivka created a huge vacuum for the Ukrainians, and the loss of multiple localities pretty fast. So Severina was lost, Lasashkino was lost, Tonenke, Orlivka is lost. Berdishi are apparently still fighting over it, but I do not believe that Berdishi is occupied by Ukrainians. What they are doing is basically doing drive-bys, and the Russians are, I'd say, stupid enough to afford them these PR shots. But there is not without losses, there is not without cost for the Ukrainians. As I said, they showed this very nice image for Ukrainians. For us, it was a bit cringy, of them taking out a assault squad between 6 and 8 people from very close range. And then the very next day, apparently, the Bradley was lost, according to obituaries that were posted regarding the team that was driving and managing the Bradley. On top of it, Ivan's case is gone. Nova Mikhailovka is going to be gone. They are now restarting operations up north to Terni. Biggest problem is Robotine. There was a nice push. They went to city center, and then they didn't manage to hold it. Robotine will have to be fabbed in order to push the Ukrainians far beyond what they can defend within the city. And the most important part is that there hasn't been any takeover. So even the areas that Nirobotine were left are currently gray areas. Despite what the Ukrainians are saying that they are occupying the trenches, there is no evidence from themselves, let alone the Russians, that it's happening. The biggest situation happening on both sides right now is a anti-air defense versus anti-aircraft game. Ukrainians have been lying a lot. The latest lie was they basically, and this was official actually, it's not something that was made by retards from NAFO. It was the third lie from their spokesperson or commander of their air defense forces. First lie was, as we said, with the search and rescue radios and beacons that aren't used by the Russians for a while. I wanted to give the Ukrainians the benefit of the doubt about that, but then I was like, we have the cases within the Russians that didn't use their beacon since at least end of 2022. So it would have been extremely difficult for the Russians to start doing that, especially in open view. The only way this happened when they used an open channel was when they actually were hit by their own batteries going towards Anapa with the EL-20 or EL-22, depending which aircraft was. But now the Ukrainians first they lied for their search and rescue beacons, then they published a complete bogus uh, still of a video from 2022, and then they screen grabbed a video from a Russian moving from Taganrog to Mariupol, and they made believe that that was a destroyed plane. They claimed that it was for the 1st of March. Unfortunately, there was a timestamp on the video that was found on YouTube, and the timestamp was for 2024, but the 28th of February, which gets our back to the point that we were discussing last time, which is that Ukrainians have a huge problem with the fabs. UNPKs are ruining all short-term, I'd say, capability of waging warfare the way they want. They can tactically still mount defenses and be stubborn and bring artillery, whatever you guys want. But on the long term, once they are found out within 20 kilometers from the line, those things are going to get blown up. On the other side, they were forced to risk a plane, and I think that another plane that was counted as shot down yesterday or 2 days before by the Russians, with also a bit of sketchy evidence. I will agree, because it would have been the same kind of evidence that we had for the Ukrainian side. However, it made sense where it happened versus where the Ukrainians were saying the shutdown Su-34 was. Um, they are risking planes to do literal PR shots, and it's crazy because they are supposed to have a more valuable gliding bomb asset, which is the ground launch small diameter bomb, which was this modified HIMARS launcher with a modified warhead. Now, my biggest fucking problem I have with the Ukrainians versus the Russians is that for once the Russians are posting literal savagery against Ukrainian anti-aircraft assets. Today we had the book M1 with the whole suite of control. Uh, M1 with one missile with an old variation, very possible that it is either a refurbished, either a donated missile from Finland or whoever else. There was a control post there, tracked one, and there was a van that serves now as differentiated, I'd say, tracking device. Before that, we had the Strela. Okay, we have some lower level shit like a truck with ZU-23s, but every single day we have an anti-aircraft loss. And the problem with it, as we saw the book right now, the Ukrainians are forced to defend certain areas of the front, and they just make their own anti-aircraft defenses pretty much guessable and predictable. And it's logic. I said you cannot move cities, so there is only that many ways. The Russians had the same issues initially with Kherson when they were forced to defend Kherson from attacks during 2022, and then when they left Kherson, they were forced to defend the Oleshki area. Just the same problem. You become predictable because you are becoming point defense forces. Now, what is a bit less predictable and a bit more interesting on the front right now is that the Russians still have this boiling point. Every time we look at the map, we are not. I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2022, we were hoping that nothing fundamentally shitty happened once we were in August. Like we had September, then we had October with the breach from Arkhangelsk, and then they fucking left. And from 2022, 11 November until now, we were shitting our pants. Let's be honest. Every single envelopment that Ukrainians were trying, we were like, okay, fuck, we lost it. That much the confidence due to the extremely hard PR power, but also developments on the ground, because they went hand in hand. I've already explained why things changed. Already explained why the Russians literally went into, well, I'm sorry guys, but we are going to genocide your asses now. And it is not like they're gonna just bomb mindlessly the whole of Ukraine. What the Russians are doing, and given the bullshit the Ukrainians have been serving us with interceptions, with shahids and all that stuff, leads to me that the campaign this year that everybody was mocking because there was no de-energization campaign, and we would have liked to have that, has been way smarter. And one of the things that was smart, I need to tell you guys, is when I saw this SSO video, which of course it's an outlier because these guys were like, they're the top notch, but in that video there were 9 different Shahid attacks. None was intercepted. Every single one went to the target that was allocated to it. And I'm sorry, I'm the first to say either the Shahids had a electro-optical device for guidance, either the Shahids are that fucking precise, and everybody can mock them, but that's the truth. But also by seeing none of them intercepted while striking the same area, means that most of the strikes of Shahids that are discussed as intercepted, they go to a goal. They hit and they do damage that we unfortunately cannot see because Ukrainians are being extremely good at suppressing images and losses. But we cannot come to the snowballing effect we have right now with a less hard defense of a position, a salient like happened in Avdiivka, when you compare it by fucking Bahmut. In Bahmut, the Ukrainians fought nail and toe. They had ammunition, they had fresh forces, that ideological, I'd say, power within them because they were pushing the Russians back. So every single aspect of this war that we have seen, every single aspect of this campaign that started probably in October against deep Ukrainian targets, in my opinion, is working, and we are going to see that later on. A lot of things that is not seen. Everybody has this discussion that, oh, Ukraine still has kept about 1,000 tanks, and the cope was that these 1,000 tanks are there, but the Ukrainian army needs are far bigger than this. And I'm like, wait a moment, if these 1,000 tanks are there, I do not. I'm gonna tell you guys, I do believe that 1,000 tanks are available to Ukrainians. It's just like only 3 to 400 are in state of readiness. All the rest is waiting for a transmission, an engine to be overhauled, a lot of small things that make these tanks just worthless pieces of junk right now. We have the same issue with the Leopards as well. Leopards are sitting for most part in somewhere in Lithuania, in Poland, or at the German border, and at the Slovak border as well. So the thing is, the Ukrainian logisticals are in such a state of disarray for reasons that cannot be explained simply by the manufacturers being completely wrong about their cycles of refurbishment or maintenance, and they cannot be simply be put aside and brushed aside by the fact that Ukrainians are stupid and they don't know how to use their tanks. It's true that they make mistakes, but this should not be happening for Soviet legacy tanks. Like we see very few T-64s now. The mass amount of the losses are more and more T-72 M1s, so not even T-72s that might be captured or have been legacy from the back. So a lot of things right now are pointing towards the Ukrainians having a huge problem in maintaining this war, not because of the forces, not because of the manpower, not because of ammunition, not because of assets themselves, but because they are in state of implosion. Uh, the whole gamut is not there properly. They are waiting on the F-16 like fucking Jesus Christ, but the problem is that it's just going to compound their issues with a fuck ton of different assets that they have. And this is, I think, the biggest problem. If the Ukrainians want to win, or if the West wants the Ukrainians to win, then the US should take the lead. Every single other stuff that cannot be provided in large enough numbers should be discarded. You can fucking start giving Ukrainians Leopard 2s if they're going to be three different variations for which you need seven different countries to service them. What you should have, and I'm sorry to say so, is literally bring 300 to 400 Abrams to start a couple of BCTs, about 800 to 900 Bradleys on top of it, and just fucking flood it with US extra assets. That's it. There is no other. Ukraine needs now a streamlined logistical chain. If they keep going like this, it will not work. It will not work. Just fucking look at how many different assets the Ukrainians are literally laying low on the ground when they retreat. I've seen 84s, Matadors, Komars, M72s produced under license by some shitty country called Turkey. I'm very sorry because the Turks has said that those things were not going to happen, but they keep doing it. We have Bulgarian RPG warheads. We got the fucking flux of armament is there, but it's such in a different supply wide flux that you just cannot count on that being always there when you want. And also, for the Russians, it's fucking easy. One RPG 7, one RGH, one RPG 27, whatever. They produce everything, and their soldiers are trained on everything that comes from the same side. Maybe they're gonna have like shortages on one or the other, but they own their fucking chain of production and distribution and supply. This is not the case with the Ukrainians. So this is coming to the fucking implosion point. And it's not because Ukrainians don't have the manpower, they don't have this and that. It's because everything is not running. It's literally like you mount an engine, it looks nice, everything is there, but the engine is gonna start stalling and choking. Because the parts do not fit properly to run it. You have forgotten something, you put it backwards, whatever. And that's why we're seeing with this bullshit that the Czechs want now to start deliver things. Imagine they were supposed to deliver those 500,000, 155, and 300,000, 122. Now we're learning they're gonna fucking start deliver by batch. I was the guy who told you, and we at the Timor Criminal were the guys who told you that this shit is going to be produced. So what they're waiting, it's not the money, it's that enough quantity is there to start delivering by batches. The money can be delivered immediately. Of course, there is the source issue, and I think that part of the 155 are coming from Turkey as a middleman from South Korea, and therefore a lot of people are unwilling to pay money to the Turks, starting by the Greeks and the Cypriots. But the issue here is the following. You shouldn't be forced to go on the market. It's exactly what I told you in a space in October 2023. You are going to start vacuum cleaning the market for stock and then put the rest of these guys in danger because once they're going to sell their stock, they're going to start restocking themselves. But this logic would mean that if they deliver at once, they are gonna have to work with a shortage, and most of these countries have white papers, have ways to address their military readiness, especially South Koreans. So the whole logic here is exactly the same. Giving to Ukraine right now, I'm not saying in 2025, 2026, 2027, that doesn't matter. I'm not talking about that. But right now, it's very difficult and politically incendiary to give to Ukrainians because their requests, I'm not saying that their needs, I'm just saying their requests are extremely high. And on top of it, the calculations made by some retards on military circles in Europe are even worse. We are speaking about these guys need like 90,000 shells per month. I said, guys, just fucking start counting how many barrels you're going to burn. And there is no one in Europe that produces even the tenth of that. So if even you put 10 countries in Europe to make these barrels, you're going to have this problem that just the amortization by fire is not going to be sustainable. And this whole shit retains the basis that if you overpower and overmatch the Russians, the war is going to be shorter. They have overpowered and overmatched the Russians in certain fields, in certain moments. The war is at its third year, not because the Russians are like um, hordes or whatever, but because for the Russian leadership right now, it has become a strategic and existential war. While in the beginning it was just a fucking police action. And you can see with how the front is, the Russians keep going all over the front. The Ukrainians tried to do that in 2023. They failed because of the lack of everything. And it's not because the West didn't give them, it's simply because they counted on the Russians not fighting and panicking. If there is one lesson to be learned, it's going to be my end word here, is that do not fuck around with a guy who has the power to end you. Even if the guy looks derelict and a hobo. And there are signs now that worse things are going to happen for the Ukrainians. And part of it are some artillery shells, as was shown by internal documents, are probably Chinese made, Russian field, North Korean laundered shells with a longer range, more energetic filler, probably even worse filler for the shells. So the explosive in the shells is going to be more energetic, but also the propellant filler is being more energetic to have more range without changing the breeches and without changing the guns. So, guys, we are going towards what we felt, and this is also demonstrated by the most recent German leak. The Germans understand where the problem is. They want something short term in order to have the Russians pull back politically. The whole discussion about destroying the Kerch Bridge or attacking it is not going to change the issue for the Russians. They are fucking. They just finished the bypass. They are finishing the coastal line uh, towards Crimea from Mariupol. So all this shit that's going on is alarming for a lot of people who understand what war is right now. And war for the Russian is three things: heights and logistics. And the third thing is basic casualty count. Russians know how much they have killed. They have a stash of images. We can see that every single day. It's angering me to be right about this because, like, it also shows that Ukrainian losses and the destruction on the back is what is causing this slight degeneracy of their forces. So, guys, this was the wrap more or less for the winter campaign. It went good enough, not the best, not the worst, just good enough. It created enormous potential for breakthroughs in the future. It went where I thought it would go, more or less, but we need to get the line at Semenivka. Once the line at Semenivka is gotten, then it's done. Then Ukrainians have a huge problem because they lost the height and it's again going downhill from Semenivka until the line at Karlivka towards Cheretino. So, guys, thank you very much for being here. There will be something more, I'd say, hefty with a lot of technical details next week. And therefore, probably it's going to be in 2 weeks or in 10 days. So, once again, thank you very much for your presence. It was a kind of announcement, a wrap up. Just I will not say enjoy the war, but like also take time to be a bit more detached from it because one of the things I said to the group, I thought also that with this masterclass of humiliation that Ukrainians got around Avdiivka with the counter and how bad they were prepared for a long-term war, I thought that Zelensky would now be a lot more amenable to, you know, shorten the war at least tactically in order to rearm or whatever. They are not doing that. So me, my person, I'm saying like you got beaten, and the pattern is that you're gonna get beaten worse later on. Why are you not stopping? Well, it's pretty simple. This war right now is not existential for the Ukrainian people. It's existential for those who are in power in Ukraine. And what was said about the Russian leadership is actually true for the Ukrainian leadership. And I think that the Russians are going to turn around to their oath of not decapitating the Ukrainian power when they're going to see that along the year 2024, despite huge losses, the Ukrainians are still going to cling into fighting this war to the last Ukrainian, basically. And then they're going to think that, in fact, we don't need to improve morale by beating the body. We just need to cut the head. And mark my words, at some point, it's going to go there. And if it's not by the Russians, the guy gonna get DM'd by the US if it goes that sideways. But this is the only thing I can think about once you have this logic of, okay, you got beaten on the ground, situation shitty, you make mistakes, you have a complete letdown of your structure, but you still keep going with this bullshit. Thank you very much, guys. Have a nice day.